Hey YouTube, Natchez 860. Smoking some Old New England in my Savinelli second. You might remember that Old New England was a blend that I threw together from some Walgreens tobaccos. I think Dream Castle makes them. A couple of different Burleys and some Cavendish, toasted Cavendish. Taste is outstanding. This has been sitting around for 4 years, something like that. Really does have an old, antique-y taste to it. Want to give a shout out to OC Pipe Man. Jim, his name is. He made his first video at something like 3:30 this morning. I'll put a link to his channel down in the description. Stop by, subscribe, welcome him. It's always great to see a new guy putting up a first video after they've been lurking around for a while. So, yeah, you can hear the chainsaw in the background. People are still cleaning up from the storm. And I gotta tell you, in my lifetime, it's the worst storm I've ever been through. Easily the worst storm I've ever been through. That Saturday, I think it was the 29th of October, I made the video, Snow, Snow, Snow. And we knew we were going to get snow, but what really threw us was the amount of leaves that were still on the trees. I've been living here 26 years, and every Halloween I have most of my leaves raked to the curb, ready for pickup. And this year, I had only had one little pile started. And right after I uploaded the video, I answered about 5 comments to it and decided I'd take a rest, as I usually do on a Saturday afternoon. As soon as my head hit the pillow, the power went out. I could hear the sounds of a branch grounding out on a primary wire somewhere in the neighborhood. It's an awful sound. Come to find out, and this is one of the problems we have here, there's 2 kinds of primary wires, or you can get primary wires in 2 different flavors, I guess. Insulated and non-insulated. And something like 60% of the primary wires in residential neighborhoods are uninsulated. So as soon as a branch comes down and touches that wire, that's it. You know, it pops the breaker and everybody loses their power. And I guess my first reaction was maybe we'd be out at worst overnight. So we ended up cooking out on the gas grill that night. The snow was coming down, but you know, there was really no other sign of impending doom. About 8 o'clock that night, I decided I'd go to bed because I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning for work. Had one last smoke outside, and it sounded like repeated gunshots. Branches that were probably like that around were just snapping. Every 10 or 15 seconds. Bang! Bang! All over the neighborhood you could hear it. It was a real sickening sound that I had never heard before. Went in and tried to get to sleep. And I did probably for about 45 minutes. And my wife came in and was really worried about a very old oak tree that we have in the front yard. We decided we'd move my daughter from her bedroom to a safer place just in case one of the limbs came down. Kind of got to sleep, and my phone rang, my cell phone rang at 12:30 in the morning. The generator at work didn't start when the power went out. That's like the worst thing that can happen to me. So I had to make some phone calls, try and get that straightened out. My adrenaline was going, so I decided to grab a pipe and go out and have a smoke. And that snapping that had been so prevalent at 8 o'clock was now turning to long cracks. Much larger branches that were being weighted down by the snow were just, in some cases they were cracking and breaking off, but in most cases they were just cracking and coming down to the ground, still attached to the tree. And because of the number of trees I have in my yard, I was running between the back of my carport around to the front, and if I heard something creaking out in front, I'd run to the back. It was insane. I mentioned to Backcountry Pipe. All I could think of was that Mother Nature was committing suicide. It was a terrible sound, deafening in some cases, depending on how big the limb was that was tearing itself down. Finally got back to bed, and when I got up Sunday morning, it was obvious I wasn't going to be going anywhere. The road was closed to the right of my driveway because lines were down and there was a big tree branch in the road. I took a walk further down the left side of the street, and that was blocked because a whole tree had come down and blocked the road. As it turns out, I was going to be on vacation starting Monday anyway, so I just called into work and said, "You guys are on your own." Took me, because the snow was so wet, it took me about an hour to do my driveway. It usually takes me about 15 minutes. And my wife and I were listening to the radio in her car, and the governor was on, and he was telling everybody, plan right now for being out at least a week. He went on to say that the cell phone towers were all going down because they weren't being powered, and whatever they have for backup only lasts a few hours. So that was pretty scary, to think that you didn't have any communication to the outside. One of my hobbies is listening to a air, police, and fire scanner. And I had that on, and it didn't take long to find out that my town was just devastated. There were medical calls that the fire department couldn't get to because the roads were blocked. Anyone who was on the edge psychologically, this storm pushed them over. Just the devastation, looking out your window and seeing everything down on the ground. So, as it turns out, we were out for a total of 9 days. By Tuesday evening, we had used all our propane, so we had no way to cook. Wednesday night, I guess, my wife was able to get a room where she works, so she and the daughter moved over there. My pipes and tobaccos kept me sane through the whole thing. I sit in my little room downstairs, candles and oil lamps on. One night it was 26 degrees and it was really starting to get to me. I decided I needed a different tobacco. I grabbed some Big and Burley. Oh, that didn't smoke. So I wound up moving down to work on Friday, where I knew I was going to be working the next 15 days straight. And it was Monday night at 8:30 after that Friday that we got the power back, so I moved back home Tuesday. But it's a funny thing here in Connecticut. And it's not just Connecticut, it's New England, I think. We have this love for trees that, especially in this case, came back to haunt us. And I was really surprised. As more and more people got the power on, the news stations were reminding everybody that it's against the law in Connecticut to trim a tree, even on your own property, unless you have an arborist license. They went on to say the governor's going to lift this law, to get us through this. And then at the end of the whole thing, they said, we just want to remind you it is a law that you can't trim your own trees. That was insane. The other thing that's kind of stupid is every year the power company sends around a tree trimming crew, and they'll come to the door and you've got to sign a agreement, that they can trim the tree because it's hanging over their wires. I always sign it, because I don't want to be the one responsible for people's power being out. But you are given the right to decline. And it was mentioned in the middle of all this that one of the problems also is that the power company is even reluctant to trim trees that are near main feeder lines. I don't know what that's all about, but anyway, that's my story about the storm. I always considered the worst storm in New England was an ice storm because they're damaging. But any ice storm I've ever seen doesn't even come close to this. So I'm sure I'll be cleaning up still when spring comes, because I've got some stuff in the yard here that I'm sure won't be addressed until then. So I want to thank you for watching. Hope everybody's doing well, and we'll catch you again.